Hey everyone, David C. Anderson here coming at you from the Knife Center. And as you can see, I have an absolute ton of steel in front of me right now because CRKT's 2020 lineup is now in the building. So let me take you through all these models right now and I'll show you what makes each one of them tick so you can see which one you want to add to your collection. Let's check them out. Okay, so the first one is a new model, but it's still an iconic design. This is the new M40, which of course you can tell instantly is a Kit Carson design, the late great Kit Carson, who designed CRKT's M16 and M21 flippers, which if it weren't for Kit Carson's influence and those early CRKT flippers wouldn't be where they were today. They definitely had a huge influence on the modern knife market. And the new M40s feature CRKT's brand new deadbolt mechanism, which debuted just a year ago. So it's a really cool kind of tying together of their heritage as well as their new innovations, kind of the old and the new, the past and the present, coming together in a cool new model. 3 different sizes. This is the 3.5-inch version here with 4116 German stainless steel. There's the smaller version, it's about 3 inches. That one comes with the tanto profile as opposed to the spear point. We've also got the larger version of the M40, nearly 4 inches long, spear point, but with VEF serration. So you can choose whichever one kind of meets your needs, but it's a great updated classic, or it's a great updated take on the M16 style. Got a primary hollow grind as well as a hollow swedge, kind of a bead blasted finish on the blade. And the handles feature aluminum bolsters and GRN handles that kind of have a pattern melded into it. Kind of looks like carbon fiber, but this is, glass reinforced nylon instead. Now, as to the deadbolt lock itself, it shares its locking button with the pivot right here. Push on that. You can see the bar on the other side that pushes out, and that bar does have two tabs of metal that go through the tang of the knife for a very secure hold. We don't have not really any blade play to speak of. I can't really get it to wiggle around, so that's a very nice thing about this lock. And the other nice thing that I really like is that it keeps your fingers out of the path of the blade when you go to close it. And you can simply pinch that button closed right there, flick it closed, and you're good to go. Or you can be a little more deliberate, but either way your fingers are out of the path, which is quite nice. Flipping action itself is decent. Not top of the class, I would say, but it does have a small adjustable pivot screw or an adjustable detent screw right here, so you can kind of tune that in and get it to flip a little bit differently depending on your preferences. Prices on these were at about $110 to $120 depending on which version you choose, and these are in stock right now. Oh, almost forgot to mention the pocket clip. It's a folded over design, almost a true deep carry, and it is reversible as well. You can carry it on either side. And one of the nice things they've done, they've actually inset the pocket clip into the handle itself, so it sits a little bit deeper. And in fact, one of the things we've noticed on a lot of the pocket clips in these new 2020 releases is that they're paying a little extra special attention to those clips, making sure they're done very well, which it's hard to do a good pocket clip, as counterintuitive as it may seem. It's a little harder than you may think. Next up, we have a new variant of the M21, one of the models that kind of helped inspire the M40. Again, Kit Carson. I'm going to keep kind of all the designers together as we go through all this stuff, help us kind of break things up. So let me go through the other new Kit Carson releases. This new version of the M21 features 4116 stainless. You've got the drop point blade with those VEF serrations, which angle back, which make them especially more useful than a typical serration pattern when you're pulling back on like fibrous material like rope. Definitely get a little bit more powerful action on the serrated portion itself. This is a liner locking knife, and it does come with their auto locks mechanism, which engages as soon as the blade opens. So you have to kind of pull that back in order to disengage the liner lock and close the knife. So you have an extra level of safety to prevent accidental closure from taking place. Handles are black G10, and the action, pretty darn good. Price on this too is also very good. It's just under 50 bucks. Next, we've actually got a fixed blade M16 from Kit Carson. This is made out of SK5 carbon steel, so it's pretty tough, and the price on them, just under $64 right now. As far as the length, we've got a bit over 4.5 inches. I think we're about 4.6 or thereabouts, with some VEF serrations and that tanto profile with a flat grind on the blade itself. And it keeps it pretty robust. This is about 1/8 of an inch thick in terms of the stock, and it stays pretty thick all the way out towards the tip. So even though it narrows down and you could get some kind of more precision, more detail work going on, I still think it's going to be nice and tough, especially with that steel selection there. Moving back, we've got a double guard, integral with the handle or with the tang of the knife itself, and slim G10 handle scales. Not too thick, gonna make it very easily concealable, and there's a bit of traction on it, but there's some extra holes drilled into it as well. Give you a little bit more surface area too, a little bit more traction as well. The knife comes with a GRN sheath. You can see it snaps in there quite nicely. You can see also we've got a bunch of different hole locations as well as little slider or other cutouts on the sheath itself. So you can accommodate a bunch of different ways you might want to attach this to your gear. And in fact, they include a few different pieces of hardware to accommodate those different preferences as well. There's a small dots clip as well as another piece of hardware. So they give you options there. And again, $63.95 for this knife. Not a bad deal at all. So I just showed you that deadbolt lock on the M40, and I mentioned it debuted a year ago. And it actually debuted on a knife designed by Flavio Acoma called the Seismic, and Acoma is actually the guy who designed the lock. And here's another knife by Flavio Acoma with that deadbolt lock. This is the Linchpin. Now, interestingly enough, this lock isn't the first innovation that you've heard of that he has brought to the knife industry. He's also the eye in IKBS, which is their bearing technology that CRKT and a bunch of other folks use to actuate their flippers. But anyway, this is the Linchpin. I think it's one of my favorite deadbolt locking knives that they've released so far. We've got 4116 stainless steel again, a bigger knife, 3 3/4 of an inch. It's got that big deadbolt lock, GRN handles, sorry. And I like the blade shape a lot. We've got a hint of a continuous curve, enough interesting going on with the spine that it's not too simple, not too boring, and a generously sized handle, even without using this big choil here up at the front, which you could also use for even more leverage. Flicks closed nice and easily, and we've got a similar clip to that M40. It's folded over, not super deep carry. You got that for each side, so it's left and right compatible. Flips quite nice, and you got some thumb studs as well, if you'd rather do it that way. Price on this, just under $120. All right, let's move over to Jesper Vaknaes and the new 2020 CRKT designs from him. The first is an update of the Pilar. Now you can get it with a copper scale, and the price is only just under $55, which I mentioned this in our SHOT Show preview video last week that you can also check out, where I went over a few of these CRKTs. If you were buying an aftermarket front scale for the Pilar before, whether it was brass or copper or what have you, you probably spent almost close to $55 already. So you can get that now with the whole knife, all in one piece, all for one price. Steel is the same. We've got 8CR13 MOV, stainless steel frame lock on the back. But what's nice about the way they did this particular piece of copper is they bead blasted it. It's not a satin, or, well, I guess you could kind of call it a satin, but it's not a sanded smooth or definitely not a mirror polished finish. But because it kind of has that bead blasted texture, it exposes more surface area. So as you use the knife, as your oils from your hand get into it, it's going to start to patina and develop its own character even faster than a stonewashed or a polished copper will, which that's pretty cool. If you like what copper does when you use it, this is going to get you there even quicker. And to keep the weight down, they actually milled out some pockets on the inside too, which is pretty nice. Next up is a brand new knife design from Vaknaes, and that's the PIAT. And you can tell right away it's got a very voxy look to it. And honestly, I think this is one of the standouts in terms of positioning, at least in the 2020 lineup, at least for me. It's got 8CR13 MOV steel, which is a solid budget stainless steel. The price is only $30, just under $30 for this very EDC-able knife. Blade length, we're at almost 2.7 inches. Got that nice spear point shape with a high flat grind. Very, very usable EDC, everyday carry shape. And the glass reinforced nylon handles have a nice bit of texture. They've got a little bit of radius, so they're not perfectly flat. And you have a true deep carry pocket clip on here, which is reversible for either side as well. Got a liner lock to keep things secure, and it does definitely keep things secure. So you can see here while I've got it closed, we have a blue aluminum backspacer, and you can even see a little bit of that peeking out through the lanyard hole. They've kind of made the hole in the GFN a little bit wider so that you can see some of that color poking out. Got a very generously sized blade cut out here while it's closed. It's not exactly flickable, but it's definitely easy to open. It's comfortable, it's affordably priced, it looks great. The Jesper Vaknaes PIAT from CRKT, I think, is definitely a winner. All right, next up we've got some new knives from Lucas Burnley. And this first one is the Sketch. Reminds us an awful lot of his squid folder, but it is a little bit different. And the reason it's named Sketch is a couple of years ago, or not too long ago, he made a New Year's resolution to design a new knife or to sketch a new knife design every day of the year. And this is the design he came up with on day number 69. Now that started out as the full custom M69 from Burnley, and now we've got it in a production format with the sketch. Price on this, we're at just under 40 bucks. Steel is 8CR13 MOV, and we're just under 3 inches on the blade. We've got a hollow grind with a bit of a swedge, and a nice usable sheep's foot shape. It's going to make it very easy to use that tip, do some strong cutting maneuvers with this blade, despite the smaller handle size. Handle itself is stainless steel. We've got this blackened stone-washed finish, and some really cool toxic green accents there at the pivot collar on both sides, as well as on the small back, or end spacer, I guess you could say, which incorporates a very small lanyard hole. It's not super wide. If you wanted to string paracord through there, I think you'd probably have to pull the inner strands out to squeeze it through there, a bit on the smaller side. It's about a 3.5 finger grip for me, but it folds up nice and small. Very cool little knife. Deep carry pocket clip, or folded over pocket clip, I should say, inset to the steel handles itself as well. And that's single side only. This is not reversible to the other side. But that's the Burnley sketch from CRKT. All right, next up we've got another Burnley design, and this is called the Tuna. Great EDC shape, I think. Great outdoor camping folder, in fact, as well. But it's got that very strong aquatic shape inspired by the fish. And it's just a very elegant knife overall in terms of the profile. Holds in the hand very nicely. It's nice and slim. And remember I said they were paying good attention to their pocket clips? This one is very nearly fully deep carry. It's folded over, it's inset, and they've also kept the screws flush mounted as well. So even though this is a bit of a thinner knife, you're going to have no problem sliding this in and out of the pocket. There's no screws or no lip to catch the hem of your pants on. It's going to be a very easy knife to carry every day. Steel is 8CR13. We're at about 3.2 inches in length. Stainless steel frame lock. Thumb studs to open. This is not a flipper design. And you've got that green G10 with some cool coppery accents, again, on the pivot collar and on the back spacer with the lanyard hole. A little bit of a slightly bigger lanyard hole than the sketch, so you're going to be able to fit a little bit more in there. We've got a hollow grind on the knife, and even though it doesn't flip open, it flicks pretty nicely though. Especially considering that it only uses Teflon washers. We don't even get bronze with this, but it still flicks very easily. Now this next knife has a similar aesthetic, but it's actually a different designer. This is the Overland from TJ Schwartz. Has a lot of the same great stuff that Tuna has, just in this different shape. It's even slimmer by just a little bit. It's got that same folded over pocket clip inset with the flush mounted screws. Got a black and stonewash finish on that 8CR13 blade. Length is a little bit shorter. We're at 3 inches here, and we've got a flat grind instead as well. They've also swapped out the coppery color for more of an orange look, which I think looks even better. And he designed this knife, in addition to being very EDC capable, like that Tuna, because of this dropped edge right here, it's actually designed to function as sort of a crossover camp cooking knife, which it'll do in a pinch. You can do a little bit of rocking type of cuts. You can do some very nice draw cuts. Now it should perform pretty well, and this genre is something I really appreciate when I see production companies kind of tackling it. In fact, we're kind of thinking of this as the poor man's Spidey Chef, because this is the same price as that Tuna. We're at just under $45 on this knife as well, and we think it's a winner. Great EDC, and heck, it's even balanced very well, which is very hard to pull off when it comes to a folding knife because of all the hardware involved. Really, honestly, it may be one of the cheaper items from their 2020 lineup, but down here in our offices, it's actually one of our favorites. Next, we've got another TJ Schwartz, and this is called the Parascale, or every time I look at it, I want to say it's the Parascale, but it's called the Parascale because it actually has a paracord wrapped handle. Normally you only see that on skeletonized fixed blades, but they've actually done it here. They have removed the inner strands of the paracord. This is just the outer core, and obviously it doesn't fall over the closing path of the blade. It kind of threads back in over itself on each side. Because of the way they've done that, you can very easily take this off if you want and replace it with a different color, or even leave it off if you want. I'm not quite sure what it's going to look like without any paracord on there, but I'll be interested to see once some people get around to doing that. We've got the deadbolt lock on this knife again. It comes with a very usable blade shape. We're about 3.2 inches, a nice drop point shape with D2 steel instead of that 4116, and a nice hollow grind on it as well. And the price on this is just under $130. Going back to the handle for a second, apart from kind of that novelty factor of the paracord, you can see there's some nice chamfering on the edges here, so it actually holds very comfortably in the hand. in terms of a outdoor camping folder, some kind of crossover, I think it works very well because I think you're going to be able to put this to some heavier work and it's going to be more comfortable than some folders, and actually, let's be honest, most folders tend to typically be. We've also got a deep carry pocket clip as well, right there on the end, but it is right side only because the other side is covered up with that paracord. So that's the next TJ Schwartz design, the Parascale. Now we've got one more from TJ Schwartz. This is the Theroux, and this is another knife that's very affordable. It's about $45, and it looks really cool, and it flips really nicely as well. In fact, out of everything here, I'd say the action on this one is probably the best on the table in front of me. The steel is HCR13. We're kind of a hair over 3 inches, but it's this handle scale construction right here that really makes this knife special. The gray is just simple GRN, but we have this kind of webbed cutaway, and underneath that is a layer of carbon fiber, and that pairs up really nicely with these red accents in the pivot collar itself. Gives it a really wicked look for not a lot of money, and really, like I said, very impressive action overall on this knife. All right, next we're going to move to Eric Oakes as a designer, and the first one right here is called the Chehalem, or the Chehalem. Not quite sure how that's pronounced actually, but this is only a $30 knife, but there is so much going on that's very special and very premium feeling that this is another one of the standouts in this lineup based on the price and what you're getting. Steel is HCR, we're under 3 inches, and we've got this wicked clip point shape. And we've got this hammered stainless steel, not actually hammered, but it mimics a hammered finish on the stainless steel frame. It is a frame lock, and you can see here we've got a small screw here that actually hides an over travel arrestor, and a lot of these frame locks from the 2020 releases, you'll see that there. And we've got a true deep carry pocket clip that's right side only, but it is inset with flush mounted screws, so again, it can be very easy to use. But going back to the blade, we've got some nice details there that I really appreciate and are a little hard to pick up on when it comes to just online photographs. You really have to hold it in hand to appreciate. The first thing is we've got contrasting grains, and admittedly, you can kind of see that from the photographs. We've got horizontal grinds on the flats, but vertical grinds on the hollow ground portion of the blade. We also have a nice large finger hole, which we're kind of finding it hard to do the middle finger flick. It's much easier to do just the standard thumb opening. But all the edges on that hole are chamfered over, so it's very comfortable. This is not just a sharp edge on the opening hole itself. Again, when you factor all of this together in at that $30 price point, I'm really impressed by. But the one little detail that really sets things over the top for me is the spine on the knife. It sort of has a compound grind spine, which is, you'll know what I mean here in a second. This section right above the hole is actually crowned, but the section right behind the hole on the thumb ramp is not. It's more of a flat spine, and then it gets flat again as you come out towards the tip as well. And you can actually see that transition perfectly when it finishes the transition from flat to the crown portion here in a nice little dip on the spine of the blade. It's dead center. It looks really cool. Now, I'm sure people have done something like this before, but this is kind of my first time encountering it, especially on a production knife. You factor all that into that price point of just under 30 bucks. We're kind of thinking of this as sort of the poor man's Olamic busker, at least in terms of the styling. Not quite the exact same shape, but you have that sort of vibe for a really good price with the Chehalem from CRKT. All right, the next Eric Oakes design is called the APOC, and it definitely has an apocalyptic look. This definitely reminds me a lot of the Fossil knife that CRKT did recently. It's got a lot of kind of similar detailing. Some nice mountain finished flats here on the blade, some nice hammered effect on the stainless steel frame lock, and then we've got these G10 overlays as well. Blade steel's HCR13, and we've got just about 4 inches of it. And the price is only $64 too. So this is going to be, in addition to looking really cool, this is going to be a hard working knife for your money as well. You can get it in a plain edge or this partially serrated, VEF serrated version right here, which I'm not much of a serrated guy personally, but I think this knife looks really good with the serrations. It is a flipper design. You've got an IKBS bearing pivot, so it flips open very nicely. Hollow grind on the blade, black and stone washed finish, which that finish looks really good combined with these details here in terms of the shape, because you get some areas that are getting a little bit worn more than the rest of the blade. So you have some shinier spots, a little more metallic spots, some blacker spots. Really cool bit of contrast with it. As far as the way the knife holds, It does kind of angle the blade down in a standard grip, so even though you've got this sort of modified Wharncliffe shape, you're going to be able to use that tip nice and effectively for more than just scoring cuts, but it's going to make scoring cuts especially very easy to do because you've got that extra little bit of leverage built into the angle right there. Rounding things out, we've got a deep carry pocket clip, and it's a right side only clip. We can't reverse it to the other side, but it is inset with flush mounted screws. Another great little detail there on the APOC. All right, one more from Eric Oakes, and this is the avant-tac, which is a little bit bigger in person than I initially thought it was going to be just looking at the photos. It's not overly large. We're at about 3.6 inches on the blade, but this is another knife when you take everything together for the price you're going to pay is a very compelling option. We're at just under 50 bucks, and you've got that 3.6 inch blade of 8CR13 MOV steel, an IKBS bearing pivot, stainless steel frame lock, G10 overlaid handles that are all finished very nicely. We've got nice chamfering on the G10 as well as on the steel portion of the knife. So this knife feels robust, it feels very comfortable, and it flips very, very well. And again, this feels a lot more premium than its price tag would suggest. It's comfortable. We've got those contrasting grains on the blade, similar pocket clip execution, inset with flush mounted screws. Overall, this is a lot of knife for $50. In terms of the competition, it definitely makes a strong case for itself in that price range. All right, those two knives are definitely on the larger side, but let's kick it up to the largest knife of the 2020 releases. We've got 4 new designs from Ryan Johnson of RMJ Tactical, and this big boy right here is called the Gulf. Now, the design of this knife is a little bit more conventional in terms of its construction and parts, but it is so full of attitude, and it's got a lot of capability built in. The blade is just over 4 inches, 8CR13, at about $64 overall for this knife. We've got big G10 handles with a good bit of traction on it. Not super aggressive. We're not talking Emerson levels of traction here. They're definitely comfortable enough. They're not going to be super aggressive on your pockets. And we've got a truly deep carry pocket clip that's reversible, inset with flush mounted screws, as we've been seeing a lot of. And man, to carry a big knife like this, deep carry in your pocket like that, people aren't going to know what hit them, man. This is a really big piece. It's really going to make an impression when you pull it out. And it doesn't cost a whole lot of money either, which is quite nice. The liner lock holds it nice and secure. And for a hard-working knife, you've got a ton of handle length there. Whether you got bigger hands or a little bit smaller, mine are on the, slightly on the larger size. But even if I were wearing heavy leather work gloves, I'd still have plenty of room on this handle to have a solid grip on and get some good work done with it. The edge itself is angled down a little bit from the standard axis in a standard grip. That helps when you're pointing the knife forward. The tip is down a little bit so it points a little more naturally. But at the same time, when you're powering through a cut, your wrist is going to be at a more comfortable angle for getting that edge right at the perfect angle to cut through the material you're going through. It also makes it easier to use that tip, even though you've got a ton of belly on this knife. I mean, we've got a hollow grind, and you can see the belly starts about 1/3 of the way out the blade from the heel and just continues from there. But even so, because of that angle, you're going to be able to use the tip pretty darn well. So that's the Gulf for just under 64 bucks. And again, like I said, this is only one of 3 new RMJ designs. And Ryan Johnson of RMJ, of course, is much more well known for his Tomahawk designs from RMJ Tactical than his fixed blades and folders for sure. But those are good too. We're going to get to those in a second. But this is the new Jenny Wren Compact. Now this is SK5 carbon steel like that M16 earlier. So you're going to have plenty of toughness in this small size, despite the small size, I should say. You got nice thick stock and a very hardy steel, so you're going to be able to abuse this very much if you need to. There's a powder coating on the steel so that you're not going to have to worry so much about corrosion other than just right there at the edge, or edges I should say, because there are a bunch of them on this blade. In addition to your standard edge right here, we've got this bearded axe style of head, so you can choke up behind it, get a little bit of carving done, but you also have a sharpened edge here that lets you use the point or the tip of that side of the axe very nicely. The back end, the spike, is also sharpened, not just here, but also on the bottom and all along the top edge as well, which you can use that if you're doing some sort of scraping types of tasks at camp or while you're hunting. You're going to be able to get a lot of use out of the head of the axe as well, not just the standard cutting edge. Prices on these are just about 90 bucks or just under 90 bucks. You've got textured GRN handles, with a few different pass-throughs or a few tubes running through, so you've got some lashing options if you need it. And there's also a very capable synthetic sheath as well. It snaps in, it's very secure. Make sure you're being careful when you remove it, because there are a lot of edges. And it's got a nice little buckle there as well, but honestly, it's not coming out of there, even with that attached, I don't think. But that is the Jenny Wren Compact. All right, now some of the RMJ fixed blades. This first one is called the Outlet. Now, technically, this is not just a neck knife, this is also a multi-tool, because it does have a bottle opener. Gotta love that. Now, in terms of actual use as a neck knife, I think it's definitely best when you hold this in a pinch grip. Because when you hold it in a standard grip, the tip is kind of pointed in a kind of a strange direction, and the handle feels a little bit off, at least to my hands. So I find it a little bit uncomfortable for doing actual utility work. It might be a little more useful in a self-defense scenario, but for utility work, definitely that pinch grip. It's going to let you get very good use out of the tip, opening boxes or packages. It's going to be a great little utility knife. Price on this is just under 23 bucks. Got 8CR13 MOV steel. The blade itself is a little bit over 2 inches. Black and stonewash finish is quite nice. We've got a hollow grind, and all the edges all the way around, except for the actual sharpened edge itself, of course, are chamfered. So there's no sharp edges sticking out. It's going to be very comfortable to hold, no matter whether you're holding it in a standard grip or in that pinch grip. As far as the sheath, it is set up for neck carry only. It's made out of GRN, and there's no belt attachment hardware. They do include a little bit of cordage, so you could probably rig something up with that if you really wanted to carry this on a belt, but this has got neck carry written all over it. All right, we've got one final Ryan Johnson designed knife from CRKT for 2020. This is the Utsadihi, which is actually based on one of the RMJ custom knives that we've had in the past. This is a great design for all manner of EDC and tactical uses. You can see it carries nice and slim. We've got a paracord wrap here. Blade itself is 8CR13, and we're about 3.5 inches with sort of a spear point shape, but the tip feels, depending on how you hold it, the tip feels maybe like it's a little bit below the center line. So in use, this might actually behave a little bit more like a modified Wharncliffe, depending on how you're holding it. Either way, I think it's a great utility shape, and you get a nice acute point for those other tactical uses as well. We've got a hollow grind, and we've got that blackened stonewash finish, which means even though that this is a stainless steel, that's going to help with the corrosion resistance, that finish that they put on there just a little bit. It's sort of a layer of oxidation right on the outside of the steel. And I love that it carries nice and slim. It's got a full 4-finger grip for me, and it comes with a GRN sheath that has a belt strap set up so you can carry this. You could carry it inside the waistband if you can hook it up just right, but it's mostly designed for carry cross draw on the belt or at the small of your back. It has a snap closure right here. This is not a pull the dot snap like you might see on a full custom RMJ. It's a more simple snap, but the price on this is only $45, which when you factor that in, I think definitely makes this a very compelling option. CRKT has always done budget knives very well, and I'm glad to see they're not abandoning that as they pushed kind of into the higher market stuff. And this knife at $45 is very nice indeed. All right, how about a couple of more fixed blades? This is one we also showed you in our SHOT Show preview. It's a new cleaver shape on the Minimalist fixed blade from Allen Foltz. I won't go too in depth. We've got about a 2-inch blade, a little bit more sex appeal than a standard rectangular shape. You got that little up kick right there, as well as the cool blue-green handles. And when I first saw this knife, I wasn't sure how useful it was going to be, but immediately I thought that is really cool, and I'm probably going to have one. And you guys think so too, I think, because you're blowing through these really quickly. Price on this is just under 26 bucks. You've got that 3-finger grip with those aggressive finger grooves, lets you get a solid grip, and you've got that lanyard on the end so you get your pinky in on the gripping action. I think this is going to be a great little box cutter or utility knife that's going to look just pretty cool, I think. It isn't the only new Minimalist this year, though. They've released a new version of the buoy-shaped blade. They're calling it the Gears version, or the Buoy Gears version. First reason, of course, you can see you've got a gears pattern that's actually printed or 3D printed onto the blade steel itself. That steel is 8CR13, we're just over 2 inches, but the real selling point for this knife is the handles and the sheath are both glow in the dark. Definitely very cool and still affordably priced. This is the same price as that other one, still just under 26 bucks. All right, next up we've got a couple of dagger designs, or folding daggers I should say. This first one is the Psyche from Ken Steigerwalt. Price on this, just under 64 bucks, and we've actually got 8CR14 MOV. It's got one more MOV, and you guys know what I mean. But the interesting thing about this is the way the blade operates. It's very different. We kind of had to take a little bit of time to figure it out ourselves. You actually slide this bolster up and down as you rotate the blade. There's a little button lock release there, so it's very easy to do with one thumb once you figure it out. You push that button down and push the bolster forward in the same motion. Once it's forward, you rotate the blade closed with your thumb and pop the bolster back in, and then it's locked. And it's the same way to open the blade as well. Slide the bolster forward after pushing the button down, rotate the blade open, pop the bolster back into place. This is definitely not a fast opening style of blade, but it feels really old school. You used to see a lot of kind of, I want to say kooky methods of opening blades back in the day, kind of maybe overcomplicated, but that's where the beauty of them comes in. This is definitely more of a conversation piece than an actual self-defense piece for that reason, because of the time it takes. But because of the way they've done this bolster and because of the little bit of a crossguard here, it makes it feel like you've got a folder with a blade that's longer than the actual handle itself. And of course, that's not quite true. It is just kind of an illusion. But even so, they've kept the pivot kind of right here, very close to the very tip end of the bolster. So you do get a lot of blade for the amount of handle you're carrying. Handle itself is G10, and you've got sort of this coffin-shaped handle, kind of echoes old school buoys. And this is a dagger-inspired shape. This is not actually a sharpened rear edge, even though it looks like you've got some VEF flat-top serrations there. This is not an actual sharpened edge. It is a single-edged only with that dagger spear point type of profile. Now the same is true for this next knife, which is called the Xolotl. We have a single-edged dagger profile blade, and this one was designed by Michael Rodriguez. Steel is 4116, and we're just under $100 on this design. Blade itself is about 3.65 inches long. Liner lock to keep it closed. Now this is a tip down only carry knife. We do have a reversible deep carry pocket clip, but you can't carry it tip up. And honestly, I think that's kind of a shame, because if they did let you carry this tip up, you could probably use that bit of the quillion right there as a Emerson wave. You could probably open that up on the hem of your pocket as you're drawing it. But either way, it flips quite nicely all the same. The handles are G10. They've got a little bit of a slight amount of radius, overall kept very thin. And a final little thing that I also appreciate is the glass breaker type pommel they have at the end. It's integrated into the spacer, and you have that vertex there rather than having a carbide tip or something else. It's a nice way to integrate it without it looking too obnoxious or too tacked on, which is pretty cool. All right, next up we've got a couple of EDC designs from Richard Rogers, who of course designed the CEO, which has been a very popular knife from CRKT. And the first one is called the Inara. This is another one of my favorites from the table here in front of me. It's a very slim design with a nice stainless steel frame lock and this very cool sheep's foot blade that's about 2.75 inches long. And I love the dual fullers that kind of echo the pattern in the handle itself. Looks really cool. It's a very sleek carry, like the CEO. It didn't take up a whole lot of space in your pocket. Of course, this one's not quite as pen-like or as pencil-like as the CEO, but it's still going to be very, very easy to carry. We only have a single position pocket clip. It's right side tip up, but it flicks open pretty nicely as well. Steel's 8CR14 MOV, black and stonewashed finish, matches the finish on the stainless steel frame lock, and you've got that nice bit of G10 there on the front scale. And the price on this is just $41.95 on this. Next up, we've got a slightly bigger knife from Richard Rogers. This is called the Tosa. We're about 3¼ inches on the blade, again with 8CR14 steel. It's got a bead blasted finish on the blade with sort of a clipped reverse tanto profile on it. You do have a bit of belly here, but you get that sharp clip right there at the tip. It means you're going to have a pretty robust point on the knife, but still enough belly to do a little bit more slicing than you might be able to do with a true Tanto or a true Wharncliffe style blade. The handles are G10. Again, we've got a nice little bit of a hint of radius, as well as a few different milled lines that keep, or add a little bit of traction, I should say. And they're set off really nicely with some purple anodized accents. And honestly, I find myself looking at these two together, kind of wish this one had some purple accents too. It would look even better. And the price isn't too far off either. This guy right here, the Tosa, is just under $50. This one does have a reversible pocket clip. I'll close the liner lock up here for a second. And it is inset with flush mounted screws again, like we've seen a lot of. Again, really appreciate that they're doing that with their clips. It's going to carry nice and deep. You don't have much sticking out above it. Pull that out and it flicks open pretty well. Nylon washers on this again, but it works very well with those dual thumb studs. All right, just a few more. We're kind of coming in on the end, and we've actually got a few new assisted opening knives that I want to show you. The first one is called the Zan, and I did show you guys this last week. Let me just recap real quick what we've got specs-wise. We're at about 3.7 inches of blade, 4116 stainless, at just under $90. It's got a carbon fiber front scale with a nylon overlay on the top that they use to give you an extra little bit of traction. Stainless steel frame lock, and the clip is a little bit out there, but we have found it in the pocket. It's not, it doesn't get in the way. It is still pretty comfortable. Doesn't really raise any more hot spots than any other pocket clip does on on any normal pocket knife, I should say. But what's interesting is the way they've done the assisted opening mechanism. Looking down through the spine, you can see a rod, and that's actually under tension, so that when you open the blade, it actually acts on the spine, or on the tang of the knife, I should say, to provide that assisted opening action. Now on the Zan, I find the effort it takes to close a knife is not super strong, which can definitely be a good thing. I know a lot of people are turned off by the amount of pressure it takes to close an assisted opening knife. Because this isn't the strongest spring overall, that kind of mitigates that a bit, but it still opens the blade quite nicely with that spring assist. Make sure to let us know down in the comments what you think of this execution, what you think of that free floating bar in there, and do you like that little extra or that little bit less effort it's going to take to close it? What do you guys think? Let us know. So we've got a couple of new lurch designs, one from Matthew Lurch and one from MJ Lurch, his knife. Both of these are assisted as well, and we have sort of an automotive theme tying the two together. The first is the full throttle. We've got a 3-inch blade, just under 3 inches of 8CR14. I love the drop point shape here. I love the smaller size. It's going to be a very usable everyday carry. We've got a G10 front scale, has a nice bit of milling going on, makes it very interesting to look at, as well as a blackened stone-washed frame on the back with a frame lock as well. Inset and flush-mounted pocket clip. It is single position. It's a right side carry, and this has a similar assisted opening mechanism, but it's not exactly the same. It's a little bit stronger than the rod version we just saw in the Zan, but we actually have a squared off bar that acts much the same way as the Zan does. Because the spring is under a little bit more tension, it definitely has a little bit more power on the opening as well. Price on this knife is just under $45, but if you want something that's bigger, again, sticking with the automotive theme, we've got the Burnout designed by MJ Lurch. This is only about $5 more expensive than the full throttle, and for that you get more than a ½ inch more blade. You get 3.6 inches of steel, in this case 8CR13 MOV with that black stonewash finish, hollow grind. Got a stainless steel frame lock on the back with a blackened stonewash, deep carry inset pocket clip with flush mounted screws, single position, but on the other side we've got a G10 handle scale with a top layer of carbon fiber. Action on this is again quite good, fires the blade open very easily, and this is another really cool knife and a really good value proposition. Although for me personally, it's a little bigger than I usually carry. I'd personally probably go for the full throttle. I like that blade shape. I like the full flat grind. I think it's an elegant shape overall, and it's really good. All right, now I saved the fidgetiest stuff for last, and the first is the new BT Fighter Compact from Brian Ty. Brian Ty, of course, has had a ton of great collaborations with CRKT over the years, and there's two new ones coming out right now for 2020. The BT Fighter Compact, as the blade comes in at just about 2.8 inches for $45. And we've also got the full-size BT Fighter that has a Tonto profile blade at about 3.6 inches for only just under $50. So either one is priced very well, especially when you consider it comes with a button lock, and it is an IKBS flipper, so it's really fun to open, close, open, close. We've been doing that a lot. And I really like the shape of the Compact personally, which is why I pulled that over the full size. Now it may look like this might get in the way of your grip, and indeed my middle finger does sit on top of it, but it doesn't really bother me the way the rest of the knife kind of holds together. But it gives me about a 3.5 finger grip, and it's a good size to have in your pocket every day. The blade's a great EDC size at about 2.8, 8CR13 MOV, and a stonewash finish. Actually, let me check real quick. This is the first blade with a satin stonewash finish, which by far is my favorite blade finish going out there. So this is definitely right up my alley, especially at that price, with the IKBS, with the button lock, and it's even got a really cool pocket clip. Stacked up here with a nice ball at the end, It looks really cool, and it's not going to set you back too much money either, which that's even better. And finally, last but not least, we've got a couple new variants of the CRKT Provoke, which some of you guys out there may think this is kind of a gimmick design, but it really isn't. We actually gave this our top award in our Best Knives of 2019 video, which you can check out if you're so inclined. Now, at first glance, this looks like just a standard Provoke, but once you close it, you can see right there at the end, we've got an actual small glass breaker insert right there, making this the first responder version of the CRKT Provoke. Apart from that, it's got that same great kinematic action with those two opening arms. It allows you, as soon as you pull it from your pocket, or the bolt-around sheath, which the first responder version includes the bolt-around sheath in the package. You don't need to buy it separately. But as soon as you pull that out, push there with your thumb, the blade rockets out. It's very fast, very intuitive, and there's not really any chance of the blade folding closed on your fingers since it doesn't move that way at all. Price on this version is $225, and that includes the bolt-around sheath. And honestly, for me personally, if you're going to get a Provoke, I think you might as well get this one because it's only $25 more than the standard version. And for that money, not only do you get that included sheath, you also get that glass breaker piece right there. And it doesn't take up any extra space. It doesn't get in the way. It's just added functionality for not too much extra money. I mean, if you're going to spend $200 anyway, make it $225 and get this one. In addition to this, they did also release a new version with the VEF serrations. It doesn't come with the glass breaker, and that one's also priced at $200 or just under, just like the rest of them. I love this knife. You should check it out. $225 on the first responder Provoke. All right, everyone, thanks for sticking around to the end with me. I know this was a lot of stuff to go over. It's a lot of stuff for us to process here, too, as we go over all these new releases from CRKT. Make sure to let us know in the comments which one of these was your favorite, what you like, what you don't like, what you might want to see different. Make sure to let us know all of that. And in the meantime, if you want to get your hands on any of these knives, we're going to leave links to them in the descriptions below so you can head over to KnifeCenter.com. I'm David C. Anderson signing off. See you next time.
Bean it.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks for that.
Sorry. Beans. Let me fumble in the middle of a sentence instead of right at the beginning.
Using that out of context.
Can't use that. Copyright strike.
Using that.
Can use that.